Okay, so you're probably following uh, all the stuff about these tariffs the U.S. just hit China with, right?
Oh, yeah. 104% tariffs is pretty huge, right?
Yeah, I mean that's massive,
Hmm.
and it got us thinking. What could this mean for like India?
Right.
Because I feel like India's been kind of like on the verge of becoming this like economic powerhouse,
For sure. For sure.
and this could be a real turning point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like we were looking at some analysis that basically lays out how this could be a real opportunity for India.
Yeah, it's really interesting stuff.
And I think for our listeners who like I mean, you guys are the type who really want to understand the big picture, the
Totally.
big shifts that are happening, and I feel like this could be one of them.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think the mission today is to really cut through all the noise and just understand like
Yeah.
at the core, what are the opportunities for India?
Right. And what kind of like transformations could this lead to?
Exactly.
Yeah. Because it's not just about like, a trade war or something.
Yeah.
This could actually like reshape where things are made globally.
Right.
And the analysis we were looking at, it really makes a compelling case for India as like a
Uh-huh.
major winner in all of this.
Okay, so we've been hearing about, China plus one for years,
Yeah. Yeah.
companies diversifying their supply chains.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Yeah.
with tariffs this big, I feel like it's not just about adding one more place.
Totally. And the analysis really highlights that, China plus one, it kind of starts to break down
Yeah.
when you have tariffs like these, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly having a big chunk of your production in China for the US market just doesn't make as much sense.
Yeah.
And that's where this idea of like India as one starts to get really interesting.
India as one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not just adding India to the mix, but like India being the main place
Whoa.
where you manufacture things for the US and maybe even beyond.
So what is it about India that could make that like a realistic thing?
Well, the analysis points to a few things that are kind of coming together at the right time. First off, you've got this like massive labor pool, right, which you need for serious manufacturing,
Yeah.
and then infrastructure, which has always been a bit of an issue in India.
Right.
But they're making some big improvements there.
Okay.
And then on top of that, you've got this push for policies that are way more business friendly.
Right.
So it's getting easier for companies to, set up shop and actually do business there.
So it's not just like a free for all though, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely not.
Like it's not every industry that's going to benefit from this.
Exactly. Some sectors are going to be in a much better position to capitalize on this.
So which ones are they talking about specifically?
Well, electronics manufacturing is a huge one.
Uh-huh.
Smartphones, laptops, all those consumer gadgets that everyone's buying.
Yeah.
That's a huge market. And Indian companies could really grab a big chunk of that.
Okay.
Then you've got textiles and apparel, which India already has a pretty good foundation in.
Right.
And then auto components, especially with the whole electric vehicle thing taking off.
Oh yeah.
And then renewable energy equipment.
Right.
All those things are going to be in high demand globally, and the tariffs make it way more expensive to get them from China.
So this kind of feels like it fits in perfectly with India's own like Make in India push, right?
Oh, absolutely.
For people who aren't totally familiar with that, can you kind of break it down?
Sure. Make in India, it's basically the government trying to boost manufacturing inside the country, right?
Yeah.
Attract investment, reduce reliance on imports. And with these tariffs, it's like Make in India goes from being a domestic thing to a global strategy.
Right, because now
Exactly.
producing in India makes you competitive in the US market.
Exactly.
So let's talk about some of those export opportunities in more detail.
Okay.
Like with electronics and consumer goods,
Mhm.
how much of the US market could India realistically capture?
Potentially a lot. The US market for electronics is massive.
Yeah.
And if Indian companies can get the investment, the technology, and build up their supply chains,
Mm-hmm.
they could really become major players.
Right. And it's not just about putting the final product together.
No, no.
It's about the whole ecosystem.
Exactly, like building up the entire manufacturing process within India.
Okay. Then there's pharmaceuticals, which
Right.
India is already, the pharmacy of the world.
Right.
So how does this change things for them?
Well, I mean, India is already super strong in generics.
Right.
And a lot of the stuff that goes into making drugs, the active ingredients and all that,
Yeah.
a lot of that comes from China. And now with the tariffs, it's going to be more expensive.
Right.
So this could be a chance for India to not just export more generic drugs, but to also really ramp up production of those key ingredients.
So basically become even more dominant.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, what about textiles and apparel?
Well, India has a long history there, right?
Hmm.
Lots of skilled workers and established factories. And with Chinese textiles getting pricier in the US and Europe,
Uh,
Indian manufacturers are probably going to see a surge in orders.
okay.
And what's interesting is India's moving beyond just basic clothing. They're focusing more on high quality fashion exports,
Okay.
where design and craftsmanship really matter.
And then there's the whole EV revolution,
Yeah.
which means huge demand for auto components,
Mm-hmm.
especially those specific EV parts.
Right.
How could India become like a key player in that with these tariffs in place?
Well, basically, the world needs tons of these EV parts, and they need them to be affordable and high quality.
Mm-hmm.
And India could be the place to make them.
Okay.
The tariffs make it much more appealing for U.S. car companies to look for alternatives to China.
Right.
And India could be that alternative.
So all this manufacturing and exporting means we got to talk about foreign investment.
Absolutely.
The analysis talks about a potential surge in FDI. So what's making India so attractive
Mm-hmm.
for companies looking to like relocate or expand?
Well, it's a few things.
Okay.
Obviously, the tariffs make it cheaper to produce in India right now.
Right.
But companies are also thinking long term.
Yeah.
They want stability, they want growth, and India has this huge and growing market. So that's a big draw. And then you add in the improvements in infrastructure,
Yeah.
the friendlier policies.
Yeah.
It's starting to look like a really good bet.
And we're seeing some big names already making moves, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Apple, Foxconn, Samsung, Tesla.
Yeah, those are big ones.
It feels like a sign of things to come.
Totally. When you see those giants setting up shop, it sends a message.
Yeah.
And it creates this ripple effect. You know, other companies in their supply chains follow them.
Okay.
And suddenly you've got this whole ecosystem building up.
And the analysis says billions of dollars in FDI could flow into India in the next few years.
Yeah, that's based on real interests.
Yeah.
You know, companies are already putting their money where their mouth is.
It's interesting how this all ties into the bigger picture with, the U.S. and India getting closer.
Oh, for sure.
How do you see those strategic ties playing into this whole economic shift?
Well, I think the U.S. and India are becoming more aligned strategically,
Mhm.
partly because they're both concerned about China's growing influence, and that creates a good foundation for stronger economic ties.
Okay.
The U.S. sees India as a key partner, and that could lead to some real benefits.
Like what kind of benefits?
Well, maybe preferential trade deals, joint manufacturing initiatives,
Mm-hmm.
more collaboration on technology and defense.
So it's not just about economics.
No, it's about building a deeper relationship.
Okay, so let's zoom in on India for a second.
Okay.
The analysis says this growth isn't just going to be concentrated in the big cities.
Yeah, this is really important.
What about those Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities?
Well, as manufacturing expands, those cities have a real chance to become new industrial centers.
Wow.
That means jobs, infrastructure development, more entrepreneurship.
Okay.
It could really help spread the economic benefits more evenly across the country.
And maybe take some pressure off those megacities.
Exactly.
So India's at this crossroads.
Totally.
What does the analysis say they need to do to really make the most of this opportunity?
They highlight a few key things. One is simplifying regulations, make it easier for businesses to operate.
Okay.
Another is investing in infrastructure, roads, ports, railways, all that.
Right.
They need to make sure they have enough energy to power all this growth.
Yeah.
And they need to keep investing in their workforce, make sure people have the skills for these new jobs.
So it's not just about sitting back and waiting for the money to roll in.
No, they need to be proactive
Yeah.
to create the right environment for businesses to thrive.
And the analysis actually uses the phrase economic renaissance to describe what could happen.
Yeah, it's a bold statement. It is. But I mean, the potential is there. You've
Yeah.
got these global shifts happening.
Yeah.
India has some real advantages, like its population, its growing market, and if
Yeah.
they make the right policy moves, yeah, I think a period of major economic growth is definitely possible.
So to kind of sum it all up, what we've learned from this analysis is that these U.S. tariffs on China, they're not just about trade. They're about much bigger shift that's happening.
Yeah, it's like a reshaping of the global economy.
And India's in a prime position to benefit.
Yeah, we're talking potential booms in all sorts of industries, huge investments from abroad,
Yeah.
stronger partnerships with countries like the U.S.
Even changes within India itself.
Exactly. It's a really significant development.
Yeah, and for you listening, understanding these potential changes is crucial for navigating this new world that's emerging.
Absolutely.
So we'll leave you with this. What specific parts of Indian industry do you think are going to see the most growth in the next few years?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It's something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive,
Yeah, thanks for having me.
and we'll see you next time.